I'm called John. Yeah, that's my first name. Korean name is Sejong, Sehejong, and the last name, that's family name, is H.A. So if you laugh a few times, you'll never forget my name. Ha ha. Indians call me Benihas, so that's what it is.
You are Korean.
Yes, yes. I was born in Korea.
When?
Seoul.
When and where, and could you tell me more about your childhood?
Myself?
Yeah.
I was born in Seoul on February 12th, 1934. And
1930?
1934. February 12th is Lincoln's birthday.
So you shared the birthday with Lincoln.
Well, I wish I were Lincoln, famous president. But anyway, I was born in Seoul and attended school, primary school, kindergarten, and the primary school in...
What primary school did you?
Primary, the Haehwa.
Haehwa?
Yes, that's located in Haehwa, Haehwa-dong. That's the village of Haehwa.
I myself graduate of Dongsong High School.
Dongsong High School, that's
right around the Haehwa-dong Rotary.
Traffic circle.
Yes, sir.
Notary.
Yeah.
Notary circle, yes, yes. That's where it is. And also I went to Posong Junior High as well as the senior high school.
Very good school, I know.
Thank you. And then I went to Sungkyunkwan University. I studied political science, and that was way back in 1900, early 1900s. So that's my background.
So how old were you when the Korean War broke out?
When the war broke out, I was just turning to 17 years old. And American age is 1 year less, so
right.
16. And June the 25th, which was Sunday, and all of a sudden,
1950.
Yes, 1950, and I did not know what the war was like, and I heard about it through the textbooks and things in that nature. And also I had a little bit of experience during the Second World War too. I was young. I knew something was going on, but I didn't know exactly what the war was like. But I was told that once you go to the Army service, Armed Forces, and Navy, Air Force, and so forth, you're going to get killed. That's what I was told about through the radio. At that time in Seoul, I understand only one radio station, Seoul radio station, and through which President Syngman Rhee came on, and he announced that war is on, and North Korea had invaded South Korea. However, our Korean troops were advancing toward the north, and we were winning.
That's what you heard?
Yes, yes. Many times he came on, and so I guess we were fooled, but we believed in him because he was our president, and he was announcing that our troops were advancing to win. But a day later, people were talking about one. It's not. Actually, we are losing the battle, and we saw so many refugees coming down from the northern part of the Korea. So we knew we were losing the battle. And that was on 26th and 27th in the morning, early in the morning of the 27th. By the way, our house was located right by the main track, which was leading from the north Haehwa Hewa Circle
Mm-hmm.
to Changyangwon.
Mm-hmm.
That's-
Mm-hmm.
And our house is located on the right-hand side.
Close to Songyungwan University.
In between the traffic circle
Yeah.
and the Songyungwan
Yeah, right.
University. And we heard a lot of commotions early in the morning, and we heard some noise of tank,
Oh.
and some motorcycle, thundering sound of motorcycle. So we didn't know exactly what was going on. And that time, in our household, our grandfather and grandmother and my mother and myself and my younger sister and a few other people were there. And my grandfather said, let's take a look what's going on outside. So we were stupid enough to open the window to look outside over the fence. And rather it's over the wall, it's a wooden wall. And all of a sudden, we saw the rows of motorcycle with machine guns right on side of the motorcycle. It's German made.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, I found out it's a two-man ride.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the driver and a gunnery right on side of the motorbike. And we saw the tanks coming in, and I would say about 5 or 6 tanks passed by, and all of a sudden there was sparkling gunshot. And the first thing I knew, I was on the ground. And about 10-15 minutes later, I woke up, and I was bloody on my back here, on my neck. And my grandfather was hit by shrapnel, all kinds of, I don't know what hit him. And my grandma was hit by a bullet, went through her forehead. And she died later on because of that wound. And
So they
that was
actually
the-
targeted you.
they didn't know who we were. We were just opening up, we did open the window and looking outside, so they feared we might be,
So they saw you.
yes,
Okay.
they saw us. So they just shot at us. And fortunately, no one got killed at that time, but my grandmother died of wounds later on. And that was my first experience of war. And then my grandfather says, well, I think you guys should run for your life. If you guys want to stay here, you may get killed. So my mother and myself and my younger sister, all of the people were staying home. They said, well, you just, the 3 of you take off and go somewhere and see whether you can live. So that very morning,
That's the 27th?
yes, 27th, we started to run from our house.
Who? You and?
My mother, myself, and my younger sister.
Okay.
She's a year younger than I am. We ran toward Tucson. That's the east side of the Han River. And it took us 2 days to walk from Hewadong
To Tucson?
to Tucson.
Why did it take so long?
Well, because there was some fighting in the city, city fights, okay, between the North Koreans and the South Korean troops. It was scheduled fighting, not
Not
and there
total,
were-
yeah.
Yes, so we had to go the alleys behind the city. Okay, where do we find the alleys? So
Were you able to eat?
not too much. We couldn't find anything to eat that time.
So what did you eat?
We just run. We.
You didn't eat at all?
No, nothing at all.
For 2 days?
Until we hit Duksan area, and we saw the tomato field, and also cabbage and what have you. And there were thousands of refugees getting at the food. So it was kind of either you die or
Survival of the fittest.
survival of your life. Anyway, and amongst refugees, I mean, tons of refugees, you can't even count. Children, old and young, women, you name it. And there were hundreds of defeated South Korean army. They were all wounded. Most of them were wounded. And they were coming down to escape from the North Koreans' attack. We get thousands of people coming down toward the Han River to cross the Han River. But there wasn't any boats or anything to ride on to go across, except it's called a Danmo, which means in English translation, it's a wooden, wood-based kind of
Simple
boat.
carrier. Yeah.
Yeah, carry. And the army that time, I think it was army personnel. They directed the old man and the younger children to get on that Denmark first to go across. And a lot of them swam across the river. The current was very hard, to swim across Han River. That's kind of, I don't know how many yards, but it's quite a bit of a distance, But anyway, I got on the Danmo along with my sister and my mother. And
You
went
were lucky.
across. Yes, we were one of the luckiest people.
I assume that there are not many Denmark there.
No, only a few around, but somehow we managed to get on it. And it was too heavy to go across. So the soldiers said, whoever able to swim, why don't you guys tie up your body with the rope? And some can push it from behind, some can swim up front, so that we can go across. And I knew a little bit of swimming, so I just got off it, and I pushed it, and finally we managed to go across. Right now, the place is called Bongwon-sa. That's one of the temples of South Korea in Seoul. And we got there somehow. We managed to, at that time it wasn't, the roads weren't there. It's all mountain and the rice paddies and what have you. And as soon as we got there, the monks received us, and they said, you guys cannot stay here because this place is already occupied by the North Korean troops. So you must go back. And we turned around, and we had come back to Seoul, and stayed in Seoul until September the 27th. September the 27th of 1950. And
What happened on that day?
during 3 months period between June 25th, June 27th and September the 27th. Partially, our family was in Seoul, staying at our house, hiding most times, because the North Korean sympathizers in our village came around to look for the able young person to have them go to fight against the South Korean troops. So partially we were hiding, and partially we couldn't hide from them because just about every day they summoned us to witness what they call People's Court. It's called in Korean Inmin Jepan. And if you don't go out to watch or witness the People's Court, you may be regarded as a non-sympathizer
Right.
to North, and you may be prosecuted. So we had to, by force, to go out and witness. And I saw a few executions of innocent village people.
On the spot.
Right on the spot. You know, they said, well, you are the judge, so whoever are there, they are the judge. And the North Korean troops and sympathizers were judges and the prosecutors. Okay. So whenever they said we have to kill this guy, everybody had to applaud. Yay, yay. Okay. And I feel that, still nowadays I feel guilty because, number one, I watched the innocent people die. And second, I was part of the witnessing group saying yay. Although I wasn't agree with them totally, but otherwise you're going to get killed. So in that sense, I feel very guilty of saying, you know, I agree with them to kill innocent people. You know. And that was the not so much in our village, but it went on all over the place. It gives me such a chill.
Must be. How did you
And
able to eat? Were you
Well,
able to buy stuff?
yes, we had to buy the groceries from a local market.
So they were still selling and buying stuff there?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
There were some food around, but you know, groceries around. But it was my part of the responsibility, whereas it's my mother and the other family members go out and get some stuff for us to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know exactly how they managed it, but we survived. Not much of food, actually, you know, whatever we can get hold of. We just barely survived. Maybe once a day, twice a day. If you eat twice a day, it's a lot, you know. But that's the kind of ordeal we went through.
Mm.
And that lasted about 3 months. And during that time, my mother and I couldn't stay in Seoul because I was afraid of being drafted or being forced to go to the war.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to Ujeongbu, one of the temples where we knew the monks. So finally we made it there. It took us about good 4 days to walk from Seoul to there. And as soon as we got there,
All
the
of your
monks-
family?
Huh?
All of your family?
No, only 3 of us, my
Okay.
sister and
Uh-huh,
myself
uh-huh.
and my mom. And also they said, you cannot stay here, because if you want to stay here, you have to be registered. And once you are registered, you're going to be investigated, and the chances are you're going to get killed. So that's why we had to come back to Seoul. And somehow 3 months has gone by, through all kinds of ordeal we went through. And finally, General Douglas MacArthur came in at the Incheon Landing on September 15th,
Mhm.
and he liberated us.
So
Yeah, so
September 27th.
yes, September 27th. And I was there in Seoul to witness
Mm.
the first Marines by U.S. And also the Korean troops came in to retake Seoul.
Yeah.
And the final city battle took place at Haewha Traffic Circle.
Uh-huh.
There were, I would say, more than 70, between, if my memory serves me correctly, I think there were between 70 and 100 troops were all tied. The arms and legs as in a row, several rows,
North Koreans?
all together, with the North Korean uniform on it. But later on, we found out they are not all the North Korean troops. They were part of the South Koreans who were inducted.
Uh-huh.
And,
Collaborating with North
yeah,
Korean soldiers.
you know, and forcefully they were served. They served as North Korean
Right.
troops. North Koreans left them there
Mm.
by tying the legs and arms and what have you, and left them with some gunnery, ammunitions and whatever.
Mm.
And they were the last one to fight against this First Marine Corps coming in to retake the Seoul. Okay.
I see. So that North Korean soldier and those collaborator forced by the North Korean army were tied so that they cannot move
cannot-
around,
they
but
cannot
just
get
fight
away
against the.
from, they could not get away from the sea. Okay.
Yep.
So it was like a human waste.
Yep.
A buffer zone.
Last
They
defense
used
line.
them as a buffer zone. And they got all killed. And also, when they were going back to north, I saw them carrying the bamboo sticks. Didn't have enough guns, and a lot of them were wounded soldiers too. You know? But anyway, that was the last battle scene I saw. But before that was like I would say 5 o'clock in the morning.
Of September
September 27th.
7th.
Okay. And I think it was around 3 o'clock. Yeah, I would say 4, 5, somewhere around there. I couldn't tell exactly what time it was, but we saw a hell of a gunfights, noise, and that finally they stopped. And that was the last gun fight took place in Seoul, as I understand. And I guess about half an hour later, we heard a lot of commotion saying, "Oh, Manse," which means hooray.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody come out. Everybody should come out, and people were yelling outside like crazy. So my grandfather says, "Well, Americans are here, so let's go out." And that first summons by North Korean troops were fooling us, so that people come out to the street and they're gonna shoot them down. Okay, and so luckily we didn't go out to see what's going on.
So then there was North Korean soldiers still remaining
yes,
there
some
on even
remained.
September 27th morning?
Yes, yes, and they were hiding, and I guess in all the houses there,
Mhm.
you know. And around 6 o'clock, somewhere around there, another noise was going on like crazy, saying, "Well, Manse, come out." And that was the South Korean troops were saying, "Please come out to greet us," you know. But night before, 10 o'clock, I remember distinctively, all our family was staying in one room. My mother suggested that we shouldn't sleep in different rooms. We should gather in one room so that we'll be safe. And somebody was knocking down the front gate. Bam, bam, bam. And they kick it and kick it, and finally they broke down the gate. We heard footsteps throughout the house. You know, the Korean houses are set up. It's a ground, courtyard, and all that, right? So we hear some footsteps through the courtyard. And somebody says, you check this room, you check that room, you check this room. And luckily, our room wasn't checked.
So your mom was really, really right.
Our room was not checked. Only room. You know? And we survived. It's very hard to tell you all this kind of stories because it reminds me of such a pain and agony I went through. You cannot describe it. It's now 60 years, 60 some years later, I can say it in front of you, but I'm still afraid of a night sometimes. That's because since you went to school in Haeguado, Tongsong High School, I guess you know the Seoul National University Medical Center. I saw literally hundreds of bodies stacked up in the morgue at Seoul National University's medical center. Right around Changgyeong. It's called the Pak Sok Koge. That's the alley. And they were all covered by fuel coal, COAL, you know. And one day, the rain was coming down like crazy, and severe storm weather. And so happened, our family and other friends were passing by that particular area, and we saw the bodies all washed, and it surfaced.
Surface from where?
From the coal, you know, fuel coal was all washed down.
Oh, okay.
See, it was covered with the fuel coal, and because of severe storm and rain and what have you, just the washing down. So bodies were exposed. And that memory stays with me until today. And whenever I close my eyes, I don't want to close my eyes. And also the execution, and so many troops, South Korean troops during that time, were killed right on the trucks, right on the jeep, right on the street, all over the place. And they were just slaughtered by the North Koreans. That was before I went down to Busan after January 4th of 1951. At that time, the Chinese troops, you know, almost 180,000 Chinese troops came down on the American troops, you know. So we had to retreat to Busan. By walking and by riding on some trucks, if you're lucky. You know, trucks were not going all the way down to Busan. You know, it goes from one point to another point. So in between, if you're lucky, you get a ride.
Many people in the street?
Oh, it's not many. It's a literally speaking, hundreds, thousands of people. I mean, it's a mountain of people coming down.
Was it through the road or is it through the mountains?
Oh, through the roads, you know. Speaking of roads, it's not even a road. You know, it's a dirt field, dirt road. You know. And the mountains, through the rice paddies, you name it. You know, it's tons of refugees coming down, trying to escape from the North Korean again. You know, by the invasion. Okay.
Were you able to eat?
At that time, yes, we managed to get some foods that time, you know. Somehow, wherever we stopped by the villages, we managed to eat, yes. So that was my younger days experience between 1950 and first part of 51.
But when did you join Katusa?
Oh, in May of 1951.
Where? Could you tell me
Busan.
about that?
Yes.
Busan?
Yes, I joined. I volunteered for it. I didn't know whether I was Katusa at that time. I never heard of it, you know. But as a student, the student fighter, either you're going to be drafted or you're going to have to join. So I volunteered to join. And before I I went to the training camp. I was assigned to. They asked me. They tested me the language skills. And that time I was second grade in high school. I knew some English language, but I wasn't fluent enough. But they tested me and they said, well, you can translate enough. So we will assign you to the 8th Army Signal Corps.
Oh, Army Signal Corps?
Yes, U.S. 8th Army Signal Corps.
Mm-hmm.
So I was commissioned as an official interpreter for the 8th Army Signal Corps in Busan.
Mm-hmm.
And from May to May 1951 through October of 1953.
So you served as a Katusa, and throughout that period you were in Busan?
Yes, it's part of Katusa. It's a student fighting unit, you know. So later on I found out it belongs to Katusa, but I didn't know at that time.
Could you explain what Katusa means? Spell out that acronym
Yeah,
for general audience.
Korea argument to U.S. Army,
Mm-hmm.
which means Korean Army deployed from Korean Army to U.S. troops
Mm-hmm.
to help
Help.
Fighting.
So what did you do in Busan?
In Busan, before,
As a Katusa?
oh, I was
What
with
was
the
your
8th Army
job?
Signal Corps as a translator
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning. And then I was assigned to go to different parts of the country, wherever they needed me as an interpreter. So, for instance, if they did some translation, or not some, but it's a lot of work involved at the field hospital. It's not the front line. It's at least, I would say 5-10 kilometers behind the first scene, for its battle line. went there to help translate between the U.S. Medical profession and the Korean wounded soldiers.
So, tell us about where you've been during that
I was
time
in
period.
Kumha.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I was based in Busan, and then sometimes I go to Pohang and Daegu, Daejeon. Daejeon, by the way, it's all finished that time.
Flat now.
It flat. You can. There was few buildings remain, and Udongbu, the Dongducheon and Chuncheon area, Munsan, and wherever they needed me. I wasn't assigned to one particular place to stay, and usually MP, military police, take me to wherever they needed me. So I had seen a lot of aftermath of the actual combat. It's a horrible, horrible scenes. The tanks were blown out. All parts of the bodies were blown out. Luckily, the South Koreans and the American troops, whenever they're dead, they were as soon as possible. They were taken back to the from the scene to
Hospital.
the hospital sites and other sites for not so much of burial, but for identification purposes. And but the North Korean troops and the Chinese, whoever, they weren't taken care of immediately. There wasn't enough personnel to do that. So it's just a horrible scenes.
How was government function around that time?
What do you mean by that?
No South Korean government function, right?
Well, I wasn't particularly aware of what they were doing. I was busy thinking of doing my job, and at the same time, when am I going to die? Am I going to survive, or am I going to be killed like that? It's kind of fear that goes through your spinal cord every minute.
Let us talk about a little bit lighter side of
Yes.
your experience. How was your English improving?
My English?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, my father, bless his soul, but he passed away a long time ago. But
Before the breakout of Korean War?
he graduated from the Japanese university called Waseda,
Uh-huh.
and he majored in English literature. And when he came back to Korea, he held a professorship
Uh-huh.
at one of it's called Posong Chunmun, professional Posong High School, college that time. And later on, he was a teacher at Posong High School. And later on, he established primary school in Songbo area. It's called Samson,
Son.
yes, Samson primary school.
Ah.
He was the founder and the first president
Uh-huh.
of the institution. So he had a lot of books in English, when I was growing up, and I didn't know what he was, and just looked at it, and my father says, "Well, that's a book." So I said, "What is the book?" "That is the book." See, so one by one, he taught me English, the words, and taught me the connotations and whatever. So I was kind of familiar with the language tones and the sound of it, but I wasn't particularly care to learn. By the same token, during the Japanese occupation, you were not allowed to speak and learn other than Japanese. So, however, my family taught me to read and write and so forth about the Korean language. And when I began junior high, we had very efficient and very, I would say, he's kind of a scary teacher. And his name is Yu Kyung-sang. And we call him Mutak. He didn't have the jaw. I don't know whether you heard of him or not. He was educated in England and came back as a teacher, English teacher. And he really drilled on us the English, not only words, but everything under the sun. So I learned English from him for 3 solid years under his kind of dictatorial, mandated teaching. So I was quite familiar with language, but I wasn't fluent enough to communicate well. But as I was serving along, it had improved tremendously. And at the same time, a good friend of mine, he was corporal, we served together. He was my kind of my mentor, and he taught me everything under the sun about English language. On account of him, I improved quite a bit. And you're spending day and night with everybody. So you had to learn, and you had, one particular guy, he said, whenever you make a wrong pronunciation and wrong syllables, and if you stop at the wrong place, I'm going to have to charge you a buck. So
Best medicine.
Yes, that was good for me.
Mm.
Yeah.
So when you were discharged from Katusa, or did you continue to work as a Katusa?
No. I was discharged in, I think that was July of 1953, and I stayed on with the 8th Army Signal Corps until October.
And then what happened? Did you come to the
I went
United
back to school. Yeah, I went back to high school to finish it, and then after serving with the 8th Army, as soon as I went back to high school to finish it,
You
I
must be
remained I remained behind 1 year because of my service time. And then the government says, well, whoever wants to go to high school or university, you've got to be trained as a military personnel because they warned not everybody was in the army or armed forces, and not everybody were trained as a military personnel. So they mobilized the student training camp, high school and colleges and universities. So I participated again as a student army student military training.
Weren't you qualified to be a teacher at the time? After all those years of interpreting between U.S. soldiers and Koreans?
Yes, see, although I was instructed to be retrained because of my experience in the past, they assigned me to the position,
Oh.
which I had to teach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was kind of lucky in that sense.
Were you paid during your service as a Katusa?
Katusa pay was very, very little.
Mm.
And nothing, I would say, American dollar wise, I think it was about $5 a month or so, you know. It wasn't much at all.
What
And,
what were
but
you
the
able to do
American-
with the $5?
Well, there was a lot of money too. Actually, I wasn't going around the market to spend money. I was too busy going around servicing my duty. And as an interpreter, I got paid, I think, $78 a month.
Oh, okay. So
Yes.
regular Katusa were paid $5, but you were
I was a
interpreter.
I was a commissioned
Uh-huh.
official interpreter.
So you were
So,
paid $78.
Yeah, $78 a month.
So about half of what U.S. soldiers got at the time. I heard it was around
Oh.
130 or 140 per month.
Well, the corporal was getting paid about 90. See, that was not the American. It was American dollars, but it was the military
Right.
military dollar.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so there were some differences,
Okay.
but I think corporal was getting paid about 90, and captain was, if I'm not mistaken, he was getting paid somewhere around 160, 70,
Okay.
you know.
So
But
that
it
was enough to
Oh,
feed
it was-
your family and so on.
Oh, it was a tremendous amount of money for me.
Okay.
You know. I mean, for anybody that time. I was very lucky to be
Please
with them.
Tell us about how you came to the United States and
Oh.
when and how.
Well, you see, because of my service, I got to know so many soldiers, including the officers and what have you. But say, but I should have written down all the names, okay? But I always called Captain so and so and Lieutenant so and so, and never called the first name.
Yeah.
But a few buddies, you know, like a staff sergeant and the sergeant and what have you. We joked. They were young too, so we joked and we communicated as friends. So we called. Let's see. if his name is Jim, we call him Jim, and Fred, and Paul, and what have you. We never call the first last name. So most times you don't remember their last name. You see. But anyway, we had such a good time with him, and one day, I guess that was during, I don't know whether it was 52 or 53, the Captain Wixon, he was one of the commanding officers to me. He said, well, John, if you want to go to America and study, why don't you think about that? So I said, well, I don't even know whether I want to pursue a study like that overseas. And he said, look at all the mountains here. He said, you went through so many different places. That's right. South Korea. And did you see any kind of trees? So I said, hell no. I didn't see, I mean, the trees were there before, but during the war, everything burned down. Mm. So he said, why don't you go overseas and study forestry and come back and serve your country? And that would be a good future for you. Mm-hmm. And not only your future, but also for the Republic of Korea. And I will find a way for you to go. So I said, well, let me think about it. And time passes, and while I was in Sangin-Kwan University, on the third year, that was 1956, but long before that, a couple of years before, I decided to come to the States to study the forest. But, well, since I'm studying the political science, why do I have to change to forestry? And what am I going to do with it, Anyway, I decided to come in '56. So I came here November 20th of 1956 as a college student.
By yourself?
Yes. I came to, I finished Arizona State College that time, but now it's called Northern Arizona University. And I tried to study the forestry, but I couldn't make a head or tail out of it. So I changed my major, studying for economics. And I finished Arizona State in 1950, in May, and then went to American Graduate School.
1960.
Yeah, 1960.
Yeah.
And then I went to American Graduate School for International Management, which is called Thunderbird School of Global Management now. That's the graduate school.
Where?
In Glendale, Arizona. I was the first graduate, as far as Koreans concerned, to study international trade and management that time. And as soon as I finished there, I was hired by an advertising agency called McCann Erickson here in New York City. So they brought me over here as an employee. ever since I stayed in New York.
Did you invite your family into the States?
No,
Oh.
no one came except I invited my younger sister, and she came here, when was it, 1965, and she finished the Columbia University, and she is retired as a teacher, English teacher, and also accounting teacher, both.
You have such an extended and intensive experience working with the American soldiers.
Yes.
And you have observed everything that has happened after that in Korea and the United States. You are in the unique position to evaluate the nature of the mutual defense alliances and the mutual alliances that has worked out since then. What is your opinion about it?
Oh, my feeling and my personal opinion is that without the help of U.S. troops, not as so much of an alliance to Korea, but it is the pure selfless desire to help South Korea from the North communism. Help what it is today as far as South Korea is concerned. They are the backbone of the economy, education, culture, sports, you name it, everything. And a lot of people think that they were, see, actually, GI is called, you know the connotation of GI?
Yes.
A government issue. But a lot of young folks, they were deployed to Korea to help the communism. I mean, to protect the communism and the invasion of entire South Korea. And it goes beyond the brother and sistership. And during the Korean War, the American troops didn't know exactly what they were getting into.
Right.
I mean, they
were not even aware of where
No.
Korea was.
176,000 who served during the Korean War. See, although there are millions of people who served in Korea, okay, but actual number who served in Korea during the actual Korean combat era was 176,000. Out of that, 34,000 got killed right there then. And about 20,000 more were killed because of wounds and what have you. So altogether 54,000 were dead.
Oh.
And about 8,600 were missing, and 7,600 were
Prisoner of war.
prisoner of war, POW, and 107,000 got wounded. Only 3,400 survived. I mean, that's a real sacrifice. It's not only sacrifice, but it's the, I don't know exact word. It's, America and Korea is the beyond the brothership. Okay, so at the time they were serving in Korea, they didn't know the Korea would be 60 years later like this one. But when I was with them during the Korean War, they all wanted to help Korean people. Not only for fighting, but also civilians. They were really into helping the children, refugees,
Orphans.
and they were providing foods and medication and shelter and you name it, so that South Korean people were safe enough to survive. Okay, and they shared so much of their belongings. A lot of people, of course, saved some money, but most of them spend their money for the welfare of the Korean people. Okay? And for that, I really appreciate that. And they were the ones who really reconstructed not only the economy but also the bridges and the roads and you name it, schools and whatever. So it goes beyond the bond of relationship. And during the war, some people hated Korea. I mean, they lost their legs and arms and eyes and what have you. They were incapacitated. Okay. On account of that, some soldiers, they really despised Korea. Why Why was I sent here?
Right.
Yeah. And why did I sacrifice my life like this? But if you go to see the wounded soldiers, I mean, they're all into nowadays late 70s, 80s, and 90s. They're in VA homes, federal homes, and they're immobilized and they're like a vegetarian. They don't know whether they're coming or going. But a lot of people are still, in good sense, they do not hate Korea. They are very much fond of being saved for Korea, for the Korean people. And they, evidently they hear and that they read and everything about Korea through, different sources of media. So they are well aware of our well-being. And they think that's the kind of contribution they put into it. So, one word I could say is God bless America, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. First of all, the forgotten war is not actually forgotten. It's just being silent. That's because Truman, President Truman, when he stepped out of UN conference way back in 1950, he announced the Korean War, and he asked for the UN troops to go to help Korea. And at that time, one of the reporters asked him, "Is it a Korean conflict?" So he said, "Yes, it's a Korean conflict." it's not the war. He didn't say war. And that phrase remained as Korean conflict until Clinton said, no, it's not Korean conflict. We have to make it the Korean War. So he recognized it as the Korean War and submitted his bill to the Congress for passage as the Korean War. And since then, the Korean War has revived. Okay, but during up until between 1950 and up until Clinton presidency, it was forgotten. Okay, but now it's everywhere you go, as American veterans, we are being appreciated by the American people, as well as the Korean Americans here. Whenever we go to Korea for certain ceremonies, we were extremely welcomed by the Korean people and the society as a whole. In order to carry on our legacy of Korean War, we have to do a few things yet. First of all, we have to educate young people. For that, our Korean War Veterans Association, national-wise, national chapter has the same program, as well as our chapter and the state chapters, what they call Tell America program. And this program, I participated in several events to tell the actual combat experiences and what it is like about the war. And once they participate in the war, it doesn't make any difference whether it's small, large, or whatever, or wherever. Once you come back, you're going to be a different person. And you will have a different perspective for your life. And you have to really watch out for your well-being. Otherwise, mentally, you're going to get sick. Physically, you're going to get sick. Socially, you're not being accepted. Okay? So, it's the kind of education we have to give to the young people so that they will be prepared for their life. As long as we live as a human being, there will be all kinds of wars every day, or killings. So we have to prevent that killing first, okay? And second of all, in order to carry our legacy, see, Korean government, as well as American government, and by the same token, the people of both countries, I don't know about any other countries' people, we are doing such a tremendous effort. I mean, we are putting such a tremendous effort to have ceremonies, and for instance, anniversary, 60th anniversary, and you name it, all the way. And the Korean government is inviting us to come to Korea to participate in all different events. I mean, as an old soldier, I cannot allow, in my all clear conscience, to have our children of future leaning toward North Korea. Okay? That's my concept. And to carry out our legacy, I wish the American government do a little more to establish that. history and concept of the war and all that by doing or by helping the old veterans more. They are doing the almost, I'd say so many veterans around, like you said, from Vietnam, Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, and Iraq, and so forth. I mean, hundreds of thousands of the young folks deployed from overseas, and they come back here, cannot even find the jobs, right? But that's the economy side. But what I'm talking about, what I wish is the soldiers who came back, or coming back, government should find a way to help them out, to stabilize their living. Okay, and by the same token, as far as our Korean war veterans are concerned, I would say from 10 years from now, or 15 years the maximum, I don't think any of us will remain in this world. And even so, even we survive, we're not going to have enough strength to do anything. You know. So within that period of time, I wish the American government should help at least living a little more comfortable. So that way, and also another legacy is to have, it's our responsibility actually. We should mobilize, or we should invite the Korean War veterans who served in Korea. Okay, doesn't matter, away from 1950 to 1955 period. Beyond that, there are millions of American personnel served in Korea. We should all call them the Korean War veterans, so that they will carry out our legacy throughout the years to come, and throughout the second, third, and every generation to come.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ha, for your detailed description, explanation, and the points that the future generations need to know about the Korean War, and sharing that with us. This is Korean War Veteran Digital Memorial. It's quite different from old concept of museum, where that exhibition of individuals and all those stuff. It's in the cyberspace. And I think the average age of the Korean War veteran is now 82.
Yes.
And sooner or
I'm
later.
the youngest one.
Yeah, right.
79.
So your interview and your pictures and everything will be databased in our website that I constructed in last year. And I think that's the most effective way and most economical way to preserve your witness and your memories.
For having me here today, and I wish I had a lot more time to go into more details, but perhaps when we have next time around, I'll tell you some of the stories.